Scourge of Heresy. Arcane invocations are dangerous and profane when performed without the Creator's strict guidance. Most mortals are too weak to utilize the blasphemous gifts of magic without falling to corruption. The Truth High Executioner serveth Reznik knows all too well. Scourge of Heresy aids him in his divinely inspired vigilance. The hulking warjack relishes purging the world of the occult shadows with an intensity rivaling that of the High Executioner himself. Its heart fire blazes with the terrible enthusiasm as it mortifies the flesh of the unclean with the flame of its holy blade Punisher. As Reznik is a weapon guided by that will of the Hierarch and ultimately Menoth, so too is the instrument of judgment sent against the creator of man's enemies. It is a vessel through which the wrath of ages embodies his hatred and sates his hunger to punish the faithless. Reznik chose this chassis, cortex, and weapons of his instrument with care and had priests in service of the Solminite artificers bless every component, even beyond the normal rites used to sanctify Mechanica. Sacred passages written on the walls of the ancient Ictir were intoned over the machine as its heart fire was ignited for the first time. When Reznik bonded his will to the warjack, he could feel the sanctity of those words resonating within the cortex of the Scourge of Heresy, as well as its unquenchable loathing for the perfidy of heretics. It was taught to express a very narrow range of acceptance for those it would consider allies rather than enemies. Scourge of Heresy has proven its hatred of profane spellcasters in battle. Their spells wither in its presence, allowing the jack to crush them with a blow from the blazing flail that flares with burning minutes fury, or it strikes with the white-hot blade of the Punisher. With this consecrated weapon, Scourge of Heresy scours Cain of heretical spellcasters. Like its master, it cannot relent in its hunt of their kind. To stand before the Scourge of Heresy is to be judged, and if found wanting, condemned. So this guy is definitely a spellcasting hating warjack, which actually makes sense since Reznik is a very anti spellcasters outside of Menoth's very narrow view of what a spellcaster can do. So I can understand that and make this guy even more dangerous. So yeah, and Reznik, I expect this guy to be a fantastic melee because Reznik is super good in melee as well, as we discussed when we read over him. But let's see his Mark 3 to Mark 4 changes and see how much more dangerous this guy is in a very real sense on the battlefield. And as always, we are going to start with his stat line. He is a speed 4, a mat 7, defense 10, armor 19. Pretty basic for a large warjack as well. His abilities include Arcane Vortex. So this model can immediately negate any spell that targets it or a model within 3 inches of it by spending 1 focus or fury point. Negate spell does not take effect, but its cost remains. So this is not just a this guy is not just somebody who has the you can't target me with spells. You can target him with spells. You can just turn him off if you keep focus on him, and he can block his friends around him from any kind of spellcaster. So you can cast them, you just knock him off. So you always want to keep a focus on him if he isn't part of your army. His bond with Reznik and all the normal bond things. Once per turn, when Reznik destroys an enemy model or causes it to be removed from play as a result of a melee attack while in Scourge Heresy is bonded to him in his control range, immediately after the attacker is resolved, he can make a full advance. And he can do that once. And a full advance on 4 inches doesn't seem much, but he's moving out of activation, so that basically kicks him up to a movement of 8, so he can get him way closer to the enemy if he needs to move into a more interesting spot. And it's an out of activation move, so even if he does move out of a melee range, it's not going to affect his normal activation. So he can move out of melee ranges and then be able to activate as per normal whenever he does activate. So yeah, if you have Reznik going first, kill some people, have this guy move up 4 inches out of somebody else's stuff. He's really hard to shut down and he wants to move around. So yeah, pretty straightforward on that one. And then we move over to his actual weapons. He has his Punisher, his sword that is on fire. It is a mat 7, range 2, POW 18, so it's going to kill pretty much any normal guy he hits. The only thing probably not going to kill outright would be like either a warcaster or a warjack or a warbeast. Or of course a warlock as well. And it causes continuous fire, so whatever he's hitting that survives, it sets up on fire. Then he has Perjuration, or Perjuration, whatever that is. So it gains an additional die on attack and damage rolls with this weapon against models with an enemy upkeep spell or animi on it. So this guy is literally hunting people with spells on them because he gets an additional die of damage that he can also boost. So if this guy is hitting a particularly hard target who has a armor spell on him, he can not only get 3 dice on attacks and damage rolls, but he can also boost his dice to get him up to a 4 on a POW 18. Yeah, that sounds just as terrifying as you think it is. So almost like gives him a weapon master against people with spells on them. Yeah, I can see why Reznik enjoys him so much. Then his other melee weapon, he has Blazing Star. Blazing Star is a Mat 7, range 2, POW 16 chain weapon, so it ignores shields as per normal chain weapons. So he can get around all sorts of people in little armor walls, so just blow them back. Then he has Thresher on this weapon as well as a special attack. So when this model makes 1 melee attack with this weapon against each model in its line of sight with this weapon's melee range, and since the range is 2, he is going to turn into a very deadly 2-inch top. Well, technically 4 inches if you're going 4 inches plus his base size. So makes him super dangerous to everybody around him because there is no longer a back arc on this. So his arc is 360. So he makes 1 range attack against each of them, whether the model is friendly or enemy. So when he does this little top, make sure he is way far away from you, which should be pretty easy, being with his bond with Reznik, allowing him to move out of melee range. So if he's around your units, you will definitely want him to get away from your units before he does this little top attack. So yeah, but very, very dangerous dude. Very deceptively quick with Reznik as his guy, which also makes sense, especially with Reznik's second variation where he is on his chariot. Keeps his warjack catching up with him, so that's where you want him to be. But yeah, he hunts down spellcasters, real good at it, and he's real good at clearing a lot of guys very quickly. He doesn't have quite the same amount of mat as some other warjacks do, but definitely I feel like he makes up for it in his punishing the heretics who likes to use spellcasting.